Hello! Winging It is a show by Oddbird about web design, development, and our approach to solving problems. Today we'll be talking with Kilian Valkhof about creating tools for developers. I'm James Stuckey Weber, here with my co-host Miriam Suzanne. Kilian,
Hey.
would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, yeah, sure. I'm Kilian. I'm a web developer from the Netherlands. And when I say I'm a web developer, uh, what I actually mean is that I use web technologies to build a web browser. But by trade, I am a web developer. I just sort of rolled into building a browser, uh, as you do.
As
And
one
I'm
does,
sure
yeah.
Miriam can
I haven't,
empathize with.
yeah, I
Up to
haven't built a web browser yet, but it sounds fun.
it'll happen, I'm sure.
And I want to take us way off track right away with, wait, it's built using web technology?
Yeah,
How
yeah.
does that work?
So it's built with Electron.
Okay.
So I started Polypane like a decade ago now. So I've been working on it for for 10 years, which is insane. But like around that time, Electron was announced, and Electron is a framework that lets you use web technologies to build desktop applications by essentially like gluing Node and Chromium together. So you have the Node part to interact with the operating system, and you have the Chromium part to show UIs. And those UIs are built using web technologies, and then I'm using that UI to build browser Chrome to then show websites inside my web page showing a browser UI.
Wow, that's meta.
The most annoying part is that I do use web technologies all day and I don't get to use any of the tools that I built to make that much easier.
You can't build Polypane in Polypane.
No, because it's a desktop app and Polypane shows web pages, so gets very complicated very fast.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm interested to hear more about how you started working with with dev tools and why you started Polypane, why you got into tools for developers in general.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure. So I've always been into building tooling. So I started building websites when I was like 11. At that point, DevTools wasn't really on my radar or on anyone's radar. Like the DevTools then was you could use FTP to upload through front page rather than figuring out a different tool. So that was the DevTool. Um, but then around 16, I started a web company, a web agency, building websites for other people. But what very quickly happened was that I, started standardizing stuff, started writing little libraries for the things I was doing repeatedly, then started building like little tools, little desktop apps to help me build or help me with all the tedious stuff or all the stuff that took too much effort to do manually. And I just always kept doing that. And then at one point, the thing that annoyed me most was having to resize my browser. Because when I started developing websites, responsive design didn't exist yet. iPhones didn't exist yet. The mobile web existed, but it was like Windows mobile phones running a thing called Internet Explorer, but not really Internet Explorer. And yeah, so, adopting responsive design, working a lot with that, getting very annoyed and having to resize my browser, thinking, I build tools, can't I just, or I mean, it wasn't an original thought. So what happened was at some point I switched over the team from that I was managing from Photoshop to Sketch. And what Sketch had at that time that the other tools didn't have, and they all now have it, but back then it was new, which was something called artboards. So you had an infinite canvas, and then you could have different artboards side by side, and that would let you design like your desktop version and your tablet version and your mobile version side by side. And that was really awesome. It was really nice to not have to switch back and forth between different Photoshop files or different parts of your Photoshop file to design your website and make sure that you're consistent across all the different sizes. So, I did that, and then I went to the browser and I had to do the annoying thing of switching back and forth and comparing that way. So I built a really crappy first version, which was, it was essentially like Electron with 3 iframes in it. And that was really nice. And then kept using it and liked using it, but it was just like one of the tools I built and used. And then one day I was checking my hours, because if you run a web agency, that's what you have to do. So I was checking my hours, and it turned out that with using this tool, Polypane, that I had built, I was getting things done 60% faster than without. So that's when I sort of, started developing the idea of maybe this can be like a real capital P product that I built and that I publish.
Yeah, that's really interesting how it was something I didn't find. Well, yes, I mean that's the thing with developers. We find the easiest way of doing things often, and that often makes things much harder. I think there's a XKCD comic, I think, where like calculating the benefits of, I can build this tool. It'll take me like, 3 weeks to build it, but it'll save me, a day every year or something like that. And, in 20 years, that really paid off. But yeah, but there's always that, that tug to, I could automate this, I could make this better. And then, yeah, it's great when you can make that into something else that you can work with. Yeah. Miriam, I think you've also done quite a lot of you work on a lot of things that developers use. I'm curious how you got to that place as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a similar path, right? Like we're solving problems for ourselves, playing around, see how we can make a thing, a workflow feel smoother, feel more tied into the way that we're doing our work. And I think similarly, you were talking about sort of Polypane coming out of other tools that already existed, that were doing sort of solving half of the problem, but not the other half. And I think that's true also for a lot of the tools that we've worked on. There's sort of like yeah, I like what people are doing here, but it doesn't feel integrated with my entire flow. How do I take that idea and integrate it more? I really like that. But I'm feeling sad that you solved your own problem and then you can't use it.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds really sad, but I have this feeling daily where I'm like, I wish I could use the tool I just built right now to solve the problem I have right now.
Yeah.
Though, I do have like a marketing website and my own website, etc. So I do get to use Polypane on a bunch of stuff, and that's also very confronting. Because like I will literally build tooling that yells at you when you do something wrong, and then refresh the page and have it yell at me that I did something wrong. It's very humbling.
I'm interested in that. So, I mean, when I first saw Polypane come around, it was really about that, seeing the window at different sizes, side by side. But that seems like it's not necessarily the feature. You've built a lot more features around that.
Yeah.
What else is in there?
Yeah, so I think, I mean, I'm still not very good at explaining it. So I have a couple of ways to explain it, but I'll try maybe a new one, which is that like my goal for Polypane is to let you see and inspect your website in all of its permutations, whether that's like screen sizes or different media features, or it's through an accessibility lens, or it's through a performance lens, or the permutation that you're looking at is the URL being shared on social media somewhere, and the little rich preview. That's a version of your web page that you can also design. So what are all the ways a person can see your web page in any place, and how can you make that inspectable and editable and provide guidance on making that the best possible version of it?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I that's actually one of the things that I noticed the last time I opened it up. Because sometimes I'll be developing something in a different browser, and I'll run into a question that I have about inspecting the page, and I'll think, well, I wonder what Polypane will tell me. And I feel like I opened up a site recently, and I didn't know about the social cards and some of the other features there, and when I saw them, I was suddenly doing more fixes on my website that I didn't even know I was looking for. But I was happy to find that.
Yeah, so that's the whole idea. Like there are a lot of things on your webpage that are very hard to get to in a regular browsing browser, because that's not what they're built for. And that makes it hard for you, the developer, to know that they're there in the first place. But then to debug that, like I'm sure if you've worked at an agency, you have gone through the workflow of creating a secret Twitter account where you can share links and then quickly delete them again, just to make sure that the OG image works. Like that's sort of like a universal experience, but it's also really weird and time consuming and dumb work that I want to prevent. So, going all the way back to why I started it. Like, it's not that I hate resizing or something like that. I don't feel passionate about that. It's just that if I'm working, I feel really dumb having to do this like every 5 minutes. Just like, that's not me doing interesting work. That's me doing something the computer should be doing for me. So like everything in Polypane kind of revolves around that idea.
I find it interesting that, I mean, as we the more we develop, the more we run into these edge cases, or these things that bug us. I'm curious from both of you, how do you balance working on tooling, or Miriam, in your case, CSS specs or whatever that other developers are using? How do you balance that with doing the real work of developing, which is not or any more real than I guess it's, how do you put yourselves in your users' shoes and make sure that happens?
Yeah, sure. I can go first. So you really asked two questions there. So the first question is, how do you maintain the balance between those two? Well, I made it my job. So that's a really clever way of dealing with that, just like by not dealing with it at all. And then the other part is, how do you make sure that you're doing what's best for your users, and how do you know what your users want? So yeah, as I said, I do still build my own websites daily. There's the Polypaint marketing site, there's my own site, there's a bunch of sites around the things I do that they all require continued maintenance because this is the web and that's what we signed up for. So I am in the trenches every day. But the nice thing about building things for developers is that they are developers too. So they tend to be much better at providing like feature requests, bug reports, suggestions in like a well thought out, structured way. And that's really helpful. So for me, if I look at the tooling I built, it's really sort of like 50-50 between things people specifically asked for and things I think people should ask for but don't yet.
Yeah, there is a lot of that. Like what do people not quite know to ask for yet? But that still, to me, comes out of what people are asking for, right? Like sometimes you'll look at, here's all the requests, but then understanding, I don't know, something else in the system, something else that's coming along, you can sort of look at the requests and say, okay, their mind is going this direction for reasonable reasons, but actually I think we can solve that over here in some different way. And so there's still some relationship there, even when the feature that gets added is not exactly what was requested. Yeah, for me, I don't know. The balance is difficult, especially because I haven't made it the job in any reliable way. Specs are not really a product that I can sell. Maybe maybe I need to work on that. How do I sell specs? But it's interesting working on a specification. I don't. I I can't. I can't use the feature while I'm working on it, right? I have to work on it sort of theoretically and then convince other people to implement it. There's a lot of people in the working group who sort of don't build websites ever. Some of the features that I'm working on are things where I've run into the problem already. Some of them are like I've seen all of the requests submitted, and I'm sort of going through them and recreating the situations for myself. Here's what somebody has run into. Here's what they're trying to do. How would I like to approach it if I was in this situation? Often it's things where like I can think of the use case that I would have. When would I want this? What situations would I be in when I want it? And so trying to work through it to sort of like if I was building myself an API or I was building myself this tool, how would I approach that in order to solve these problems that people have given?
Have you considered taking CSS to ISO? Because then you can make money.
Then I can make money.
Selling
Okay.
specifications.
I'm not sure if I have the rights to sell the CSS specifications, but I'll look into that.
Quick reminder, we are watching the comments, so if you have any questions for anyone here, please feel free to post those in the YouTube comments. I am curious how developer needs have changed over the last while. Polypaint has been 10 years. I just saw that Miriam Suzanne is 16 years old now, deprecated, but still in use in some places. But I'm curious how how has what developers need, how has that changed in those time periods?
Yeah, I'm curious about Kilian's answer, because with Susie, it's sort of very clear. Like CSS has changed so dramatically. I mean, even in the last 5 years since we deprecated Susie, CSS has changed so dramatically that layout solutions are very different now than they were 2 years ago, let alone 16 years ago. But in some ways, the developer needs are the same. There's just different tools available. I mean, I guess that would be another way to think of it. Like developers are still just trying to lay out a website quickly, right? It's not a different use case. There's just more tools built into the browser to handle it quickly, and so there's not the need for the third-party workaround. Kilian, what's it like on your side
Yeah,
there?
I mean, so in terms of their like the development needs, things aren't that much different from 10 years ago, I think. Because like Miriam said, we're all still just trying to build visual designs as quickly as possible through through knowing CSS properly, through using frameworks, through using ready-made templates or component systems. What I think has changed, and that might be because of what I do, but I think awareness of that things aren't just visual has really been improving in the last decade, but certainly like the last 4 to 5 years. Like the awareness among like general developers that you should care about heading structure, etc., has definitely gone up. And I say this as someone that has been like in that camp for like 20 years. But it's a request, and it's something that like regular developers are now focusing on with their marketing websites and their client sites as well. And that's not just in Polypane. You can also see it in like CMS systems, and part of that is also increased awareness of SEO, because like 99% of the time, something that's good for SEO is good for accessibility, and the other way around. So you can see like different tooling approaching that where it's no longer like we're focused on how things look, but we're focused on how things are structured, because that gives us all these added benefits. And I think that's very nice. I also think that what a lot of people are scared with is that that's just like the stick talking, like whether that's ADA or EEA in Europe, like people are scared to be sued. Like, I don't think that's true for most developers. I think most developers want to do things well. They just don't always have the there's a very nice Dutch word, but they don't have the tools. They can't reach the places where they can find out how to do things well, and they also don't have ways to verify that they're doing it well. And I think that's changing a lot. I see that in CMSs, I see that in regular browsers, making the accessibility tree easily accessible. I focus on that a lot in Polypane, making sure to cram accessibility information into every place that someone might accidentally look. So I think that's a positive change, and that of course goes beyond tooling.
Yeah, I agree, and it's one of the things that I really like about Polypane. And I've been curious recently how tools for non-developers could also help with this sort of awareness. Like I keep thinking, seeing a hierarchy of heading levels, an outline of a document, that's a useful thing. I mean, like when I get a document, I like it to have a table of contents or an outline, right? It makes it so much more skimmable. I can jump around to where I need to be. Wouldn't that be a feature that popular browsers might want to make available to everybody, not just as part of an accessibility feature? It seems like there's a lot of tools that are built into accessibility.
Maybe something like a document outline. That would be cool to implement in browsers.
Right. Yeah, just something that I can pull up and see the document outline. That would be excellent. And it's something that then developers would look at, right? And say, my users can pull up this document outline. I better make sure it looks good. And that's already true, but not in a way that's right in front of you unless you turn on the accessibility tooling.
Yeah, so actually when I first started offering CMSs to our customers, when dinosaurs roamed the earth, we made a very conscious choice to offer a WYSIWYM editor rather than a WYSIWYG editor. WYSIWYG is what you see is what you get, and WYSIWYM is what you see is what you mean, which is a nice way to sidestep having to replicate your site's CSS into the rich text editor in the CMS. But the idea was primarily also to have people pick not this text should be very, very large and bold and blue, but have people pick this should be the most important text on this page. This should be the second most important text of this page, etc., etc., etc. That didn't go over well with most of our customers because they, again, the web is documents. They use Word all day. Word has excellent table of contents and heading visualizations, etc., and no one uses those. Especially back in the day, you see it a lot more now, but no one used that, so no one thought about their document in that way on the web too. But I think nowadays there are CMSs, like I know Sanity is working on that, where they try to be more proactive in giving feedback as you edit your page, which I think is the more effective thing to do. And yeah, like you said, Miriam, if browsers could just shove the document outline into your face while you're developing, and you're like, why is this heading in full caps? Why is it yelling at me? Like, yeah, because you did the wrong thing. And now and you can very quickly iterate and fix that rather than having to wait for the accessibility audit at the end of the project to then come back and shout at you for the same reason.
I'll just throw out the Sarah Sueden's practical accessibility course. I just started working through that, and it is excellent. I highly recommend that to anyone. So if you are interested in learning more about how to inspect and how to understand and how to see all the ways that they are using, or that people are using, all the way the different views of your document, it's really has been a really helpful course. Yeah.
So if you're a Polypane user, you can get a discount on that course. And if you have that course and you don't have Polypane yet, you can get a 60-day trial through a page in the course. So you can try it out, and then you can use Polypane whilst going through the course and seeing how nicely they complement each other.
Well, that is great to know.
Yeah. Just skimming through some of your links here, it looks like you have another accessibility tool. Is that right?
I do, yeah.
You want to say anything about that one? Is that fixaccessibility.com?
Yeah, FixAli.com.
Yeah.
So what that is a theoretic collection of browser extensions. I say theoretic because right now it's a collection of one. But the idea is in Polypane, a lot of the things I do are telling you where you're making mistakes on your page. Usually that's accessibility errors, but then that's what most accessibility checks do. But then if you're as a developer, you're like, okay, I did it wrong. What now? And usually, or most tools aren't very prescriptive because that's scary or that's against the rules or whatever. And I want to have developers go, okay, I did it wrong. Apparently, I need to do this. I'll go do that and then carry on with my work. Rather than, okay, apparently I did it wrong, but I don't know how to fix it. I'll do it later. And then later turns into never. One of those is color contrasts. So in Polypane, you can go through you can scan your entire page for color contrast issues. And it does that like cleverly by combining all the backgrounds and then making sure that the transparency is taking into account and text shadows and all these edge cases that exist in the color contrast rules in the WCAG. And then if a color or a text color doesn't have sufficient contrast for the level of contrast that you're testing for, I take that color and I take the background color, the calculated versions of both, and then I calculate the nearest color to the text color you chose, and I give that to you. I say, your color is this particular blue. It's not quite right, but this slightly darker blue, which is the same blue, it's just darker, that does have enough contrast. So maybe use this one. And usually that saves you a round trip to a designer who's going to do the same thing, or figuring it out yourself in a color picker and then pasting it in, and then, okay, well, it's darker, but it's not quite dark enough. We'll go back to the color picker. So, that's just all busy work. And usually what happens if you need to do busy work, you don't do it because your PM doesn't care.
Yeah, you say just pick a color closest to the one. James and I have both dealt with color and know it's not that simple. But
so I do luminance, but that works mostly fine.
Yeah,
I mean, like if you have an opinion on color contrast or on the color you picked, then you're gonna choose a different color, right? But if you had an opinion, you probably did it right. Yeah.
Yeah, but what I like too about what you're saying, so when I was just in the Netherlands for CSS Day, I met a student who was graduating from the technical university there, and was building a tool with opinions, is what she called it. That like it wouldn't let you save your colors if they were not accessible. So the save button would just become disabled until you picked accessible colors, and then I like that idea that you're building that into your tools.
Yeah, so we'll get back to that in a second. But this like color calculation logic, I built that into Polypane. It lives there. It gives you suggestions. But if you're a normal person, you might also want to browse the web and then just have magically have all the colors that don't have enough contrast be bumped up to have enough contrast. So what if I just took the code I already had and put it in a browser extension that does the thing it already does in Polypane and then just automatically fixes the contrast? So it sort of lifts up all the contrast to the level of contrast that you want, whether that's like adhering to WCAG or that's like, I always want a minimum of 12:1 because that's easier on my eyes. So there's a little slider in the extension. And that's what the FixAli Fix Contrast plugin does. It's like you turn it on and then you just browse the web as normal and all the contrast issues that it finds, it automatically fixes, so you don't run into contrast issues anymore.
So that's almost like forced colors,
Yeah,
but less
After the fact.
yeah, and less intrusive, and it's much more just fixing the actual problems and not
yeah,
forcing one scheme on everything, allowing yeah. No, that's a really interesting way of doing it. It would be, I'm just thinking if could that be simplified to a meta tag that you could add into your header and then browsers do that automatically? So it's like an opt-in that, hey, I know some of my colors are might not be, or there might be a background issue with a color. Can you do that calculation for me?
yeah.
And then allowing users to edit, or enter their own needs. That
Yeah,
would also be
in
really
that
great.
regard, it's similar to the minimum text size that
Mm,
some browsers have. I just don't think there's a lot of appetite in browser lands to offer features like this for some
mhm.
reason. Like they're all happy to have a sidebar with AI in it, but doing something actually useful is like beyond the scope. Sorry.
Well said. Well said.
But yeah, so I think there's tons of things that regular browsers should do. Like, why would you have to set your entire browser or your entire operating system to a light or dark mode if it's just for one website that you would like a light or dark mode? Why doesn't the browser just have a toggle for that particular website? Same for reduced motion. Like, I might really enjoy motion on this website and get super nauseous on the other website. Like, just let me turn it off for this website. It's like, code-wise, there's nothing there that prevents browsers from doing that. I can say
Yeah.
that because I'm literally doing that.
Yeah,
In Polypane.
and they're all
So
building it into their developer tools. So
it's
Mhm.
the
also in the
features are
developer
already
tools.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It would just need to be exposed. Yeah.
they just need to have a table somewhere where it's like this domain, these settings. It's not rocket science, but yeah. And then, like, specifically for the color contrast, I think something like that might happen at some point. But there's too much going on around, like, the CSS contrast color, color contrast, contrast color, color contrast function that they want to solve first, and they probably want to wait for WCAG 3 to land with EPCA or some other non-WCAG 2 color contrast algorithm before shipping that properly. And then, maybe at that point, they'll get to doing automation there.
Right. Or at least with the CSS function, if you can figure out a way to make it so that we're not building in a default that's going to be outdated in a few years. That's always the complicated bit. Like, it's not necessarily that we have to wait for the new thing to roll out so we can use it, but we have to make it somehow that you're requesting the old thing and you could update it later to request the new thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, that gets complicated.
Yeah, and I mean, I was joking about it. I understand that it's complicated, but also, like, if you're looking at it from a developer perspective, like, the thing that function says is give me a color that works. And that's where the caring stops for most implementers.
Right.
So we'll get there. But, like, to your other point, for the longest time, I wanted to build either in Polypane or as an extension, something that I call the no-chill mode, which is just like, if you do something wrong on your page, and it's not like in the pedantic XHTML way, but in the, like, this is affecting users way, we just bring down the level of quality for everyone. So, images without an alt text, we don't show the image. If you have on-click handlers on things that aren't interactive, they don't work. all sort of all these things, like just make it the way that you actually coded the experience rather than the way it accidentally works for you. But I've been very afraid to implement that because people already are very quick to sort of blame Polypane for things not working in their web page, because it'll work in Chrome, it'll work in Firefox, it'll work in Safari, because Polypane is more pedantic, because I think, you should know about these things as a developer. And that starts with like URL resolution. So in other browsers, they do the user-friendly thing of when a server is misconfigured, they'll do the HTTP, HTTPS with www without www dance to figure out which of those combinations actually works. Because a huge part of servers will have like the redirects from HTTP www to HTTPS, but then skipped out the naked domain. So that doesn't forward. But your browser will just deal with it, which is great for users. But I think, as a developer, you should know that your server is misconfigured and you should fix that. Not because it has immediate user impact, because browsers compensate for the things going wrong on your server, but it's a quality issue and you should care about that. And yeah, so there's a bunch of things like that where I already get so much pushback that I'm a little bit scared of having like a mode that just goes all out in that regard. But it's fun to think about, like not being able to save if you don't have an accessible color palette. That's great. I love that.
Yeah, it's almost finding that right level of it's not hostility, but friction is probably the more kind way of saying that, of making sure that I think that's a really a place where I think dev tooling has a lot more latitude, or should have a lot more latitude than our user-facing websites. We want to make those much more permissive and as in whatever the user chooses to do with our websites, we want it to work if possible. But yeah, for dev tooling, I think there is a little bit of a we know better than you because we have sunk many hours into this, for better or for worse. I think providing escape hatches sometimes is the way around users who are too grumpy about disabling ESLint or a certain ESLint rule or something like that. Those are common ones. But yeah, trying to figure out how to help users help your users do the right thing, especially when it impacts a lot of their users potentially. And hopefully doing it in a way that educates them so they don't make the same mistake again is ideally what happens. But yeah.
Yeah, I think that's an important part that is often missed in tools, whether that's like accessibility or performance or anything else. It's usually like a list of things you do wrong, and not a list of remediation or a list of improvements that you could make. And oftentimes that's because there's not usually one correct way. And the example I always give there is if you have an image without an alt attribute, there's like half a dozen ways to fix that. And a lot of tools will just list those half dozen ways as, you can fix this issue this way. In Polypane, I just say you need to add an alt attribute. Because if you are the type of person that can look at that list of 6 options and knows which one is correct for this situation, I wouldn't be having to tell you that this image needs an alt attribute. So, and then if you are the person that is still at that point, still learning why that is important, you don't need, if you start hearing about, but you can add inert, or you could area hidden, or you could give it a role of presentational. That will just make it harder for you. Whereas like the problem is properly solved by adding an alt attribute that can be empty if it's presentational, like end of story. And then as if you're at a point where you care about that versus role presentational, you don't need this tool. You're at a very different stage in the way you think about your HTML and your CSS. So I think a lot of tools can bear to be more opinionated in that regard if they make sure that they know like what kind of person will encounter what kind of issue.
And I'm liking Amit's idea for a pedantic.css similar to reset.css. I think that'd be a fun project to work on, I think.
I think Hayden Pickering has something called what was it called? He has a CSS file that's sort of like this, that just, draws red lines whenever you do something weird. I can't remember the name of it, but maybe someone can Google it and paste it into the comments.
Now we need a browser tool that lets us just turn on and off those CSS files. I suppose that's what extensions can do.
Yeah, there's a bunch of extensions that can do that, like Stylus. Stylus is a very popular one. Polypane also has tooling that can do that. Like Schalk said in the comments, like arc boosts were an idea in that direction, but they're gone. RIP. And then maybe at some point we'll get that back, the like user editable browser, but don't see that happening quite so soon, unfortunately.
Yeah, Vivaldi has a lot of those sorts of user editable features. Yeah. And I know that there's several people doing sort of arc forks or rebuilding something arc-like at various attempts. I don't know all of them. Zen is one I know that's built on Gecko, but
and then I think you also, so jumping back to some of your tools, you have a color contrast. In addition to having it inside of Polypane, you have color contrast.app. Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. As I said, in Polypane, the tooling will suggest better colors as you're doing the color inspection thing. It also does that in the color picker inside Polypane. So Polypane also has its own color picker with like a set of picked colors, and you can quickly compare them as like text and background on WCAG, APCA for like small text, icons, large text. So all the different ways of combinations where that matters. So I made that available online as well with the same logic, where you can pick a foreground color and a background color. You can then, say I'm checking against WCAG, AA, AAA, or APCA, and you get a preview. And then if there's not enough contrast, we generate colors. Because there wasn't really a tool that did that last part. Again, like a lot of tools will tell you, you did it wrong. This color doesn't have enough contrast. But then the next step is, okay, cool, but what now? What's the next step? And the next step is, well, finding a better color. So that's what this does.
Yeah.
And then the color picker is the same one as in Polypane. It doesn't have OKLab and LCH and all the fancy stuff yet. I'm working on that, but it's a lot of work, and I don't want to give up my two-dimensional color picker. So we'll have to see how that goes. And then, sometime later, I also added a bunch of color blindness simulators.
Yeah.
Which won't show a lot if you're in grayscale.
Don't use this color combination, but yeah, that's helpful to have that available.
So I added that because again I have that in Polypane. I stay up to date with the science, so there's relatively new papers from like last year and the year before where they're like, actually what most calculations do is slightly incorrect. Here's new math. So I implemented the new math compared to what's in Chrome, for example. And then I figured I can also add that to this page, and that'll be nice. But then also I can. So there's one tool that I'll not name, but I really dislike because it shows you color contrast and then it lists out a bunch of vision impairments like color blindnesses, and then it recalculates the contrast if it was in with that color blindness. So if you have a red green color blindness and the red disappears, it'll now check, for example, green against green. And of course, that will score worse. But the whole idea of the contrast ratio in WCAG is that that's already taken care of by using the color contrast ratio in WCAG. So you should test the original colors and only the original colors, and not then change the colors to what they are in some color blindness emulator and then retest those colors, because that retesting is already taken care of by WCAG itself. And if you follow that logic, you're just making it really, really hard for yourself without doing anything useful for users. Because users, again, are already taken care of by the thing in WCAG.
Right.
So this is, if you hover over the information icon there, next to where it now says no simulation.
Okay, yeah.
I explain it won't change your color contrast ratio.
Interesting. Yeah.
So that's just, it's neat functionality, but I also hope in a tiny way someone will bump into this, read that text and go, oh right, that makes sense, because it does, because the people at WCAG are very smart people that already thought about this way longer than all of us, and we best make use of that rather than nothing, or come up with something ourselves.
Yeah, that's a really good
and rant.
Yeah,
a good rant.
Yeah. Since we're talking dev tools, we'll say we also have a contrast, so another contrast tool that does support P3, OKLCH, OKLab, but we do not have the color,
the two-dimensional.
We don't have all of those two things. So hey, use both of them. I think in the talk leading up to this conversation, I said I think there's room on the web for both of these contrast tools, and I think I'm right. So I'm glad that you have yours for sure.
Yeah, until somebody figures out how to get all of the features from both of them, and then we're all in trouble.
Well, I mean, that's good. That'll just or at least I see it as forcing me to improve. So right now I use a color library that is no longer supported. So it has support for up to HWB, one of those things that got added into browsers and then everyone just sort of collectively shrugged. But I also want OKLab, and also for a very long time it was unclear to me how to measure contrast in wide gamut. Because the color contrast algorithm assumes sRGB. So how does that work? But I think you just clip it to sRGB, and I think that's like the general consensus.
Well, consensus is strong for clipping, but we follow the math for converting to RGB. And I mean, right now what we're doing is following the logic for the conversion and then doing the contrast check. But it does mean that if you're out of gamut, browsers are going to do something, and then the result you're getting the contrast for is not the actual result. So yeah, the majority of our tool has been figuring out how do we warn you when you're outside of various gamuts and and let you make those adjustments. But yeah, it's true. There's not sort of a broad solution there, and browsers are currently clipping, but pretty much everyone agrees that's not the right solution. The trouble is finding a better one.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it'll probably have to be like going the other way, like going to well, you can't have the solution that like fixes it forever, because we have P3 now, but we know, who knows, like we'll get wider gamuts, I hope, in the future. So we can maybe solve it for P3 now and then have all the calculations done in P3 and then go from sRGB to P3 because it's a wider gamut.
Yeah, maybe.
But then once like the next thing comes along, which so probably isn't like Rec 2020, but some intermediate step.
Yeah, part of the solution that they're talking about for actually how to handle gamuts and bringing colors back into gamut is sort of a like, well, we think Rec 2020 is basically the technical limit that we will eventually hit. So we can eagerly bring things into Rec 2020, force colors into Rec 2020, and then from there we can do clipping and it's not as dangerous. Or clipping or something equally fast and simple. But yeah, what is the algorithm for even getting it into Rec 2020? And then if it's a two-step process, I don't know. All sorts of questions still to resolve before browsers will implement it. But yeah, there's probably several steps of logic that need to happen to then get to an accurate color contrast from out of gamut colors. Color is wild and fake. It's interesting.
It is, and I'm glad other way smarter people than me are dealing with that, and then I can just at the end be, oh, so this is the formula. Thanks. I'll just type it in and
exactly
and call it a day.
Yes, it's a great place to be. We're coming up to the end of our hour, but are there another tool or two that you want to show briefly?
Yes, so I recently implemented form inspection into Polypane, and then for that I also made an online tool. I didn't plan on making an online tool, but as I was like building the form inspection, as I said, I was just, all my forms were broken, and I figured, that's probably something that a lot of people overlook. So why not just have a thing that you can just paste your HTML into and then get an outline of that? That's not like the live DOM that you get in Polypane, which can do like area label by resolution and all the proper live accessibility tree, DOM tree things. But it does give you an overview of, oh gosh, I thought this input had a label, but I typed email instead of email, and now it's broken. And I didn't see that for the last 5 years, to name a purely hypothetical example. That definitely didn't happen to me as I was building this tool.
Yeah, that's a handy tool, and yeah, I think that'll be great to have in Polypane as well. Yeah. I think you also have a specificity selector or a calculator. This also very real CSS selector that I recently wrote that I was particularly proud of. Just it works. CSS sometimes works. But yeah, this is useful for comparing selection for sure. But yeah, it's nice that it's clear that you've put in the homework to make sure. I mean, it's not just counting up things. Um, it is accounting for all of these other things like not and is, which are definitely a little bit more of a complex case.
Yeah. So no, I parse your CSS selector into an AST.
Okay.
And then do the calculation on that AST, and that has, making sure that I have full support of, like, the last example there has the is the last example. Oh no, I don't even have that, but I even have like nth child x of foo support, which comes with its own weird like little specificity logic. And yeah, I've just gone through all the cases because I want to be like definitively say like this is a specificity score, and then that can also be used as reference for other systems where that might be incorrect. So it was very helpful, for example, with implementing nesting and figuring out like the selector resolution that happens there, and how that affects specificity, etc. So yeah, I don't use this one myself a lot, but I am very proud of it, and it works really, really well.
Yeah, I didn't even know about that nth child of class having a different specificity.
I mean, it's not, I can't tell you the exact rules right now, but there is something there where the inner specificity affects the outer specificity in a way that's slightly different from like the regular nth child,
right?
Because there's no specificity in there, but it's just different enough that you need a special case there when calculating specificity. Building this has also made me really good at saying specificity. So that's an added bonus. So if you struggle with saying the word specificity, you can build a CSS specificity calculator and all your problems will be gone.
Unless you're Estelle and build a specificity calculator, and then you're going to be making things harder for yourself.
For failure.
Yeah.
Well, I think thanks so much, Kilian, for joining us today and showing off all of these things. And of course, there's Polypane itself, which is just an excellent app for developers. I highly recommend using it and trying it out and getting all of these things, just built into your dev process. It's been very helpful for me. So yeah, thank you all for joining us today. Remember that Oddbird is here to help you build your web projects that make the web a better place. In addition, I would urge you to sign up for, wrong one there. I've been working on an email course around anchor positioning instead of a fire hose of a talk or something, or trying to quick figure out why something isn't working. This is kind of a slow drip over several weeks, over 9 weeks of just let's dive deep into these things and really add it to your tool set. So when anchor positioning is in all the browsers, you're ready to use it. So check that out and let me know what you think. Miriam, you also have a course coming up.
Yeah, it's still very much in development, but you can sign up there if you're interested in getting updates once we have it ready for some pre-sales and then sales. It's a CSS in-depth course. So,
Kilian, anything you would like to promote at the end?
Yeah, please try out Polypane. You can download it at polypane.app. And if you do try it, I would love to hear your experience. So all the email is sent from my personal email that you get for Polypaint. So you just reply to any of them, and they'll land in my real, actual human inbox, and I will read it, and I will reply to you as well.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Please visit oddbird.net/wingingit to access links and resources mentioned on today's show. And on the next Winging It, we will talk about functions and mixins in CSS. They're coming. I saw the spec. It is in progress. It's exciting. If you'd like to support us, please like and subscribe. And if you want more from Oddbird, we invite you to check out our newsletter at oddbird.net/onnews. Thank you, and remember, best practice is a conversation, so let's keep talking. Thanks a lot.
Great. Thank you all.